The following is an AZPM original production.
Arizona Science is supported by Research Corporation for Science Advancement.
For Arizona Public Media, I'm Tim Swindle, Professor Emeritus of Planetary Science at the University of Arizona, and this is Arizona Science. Joining me today is Jeff Grayson, the Chief Technologist for Electric Sky, a Tucson-based company trying to develop new techniques for powering aircraft and spacecraft. One of the biggest costs for flying an airplane or launching a rocket is fuel, but you're trying to find ways to work around that. How are you trying to do that?
For air travel, fuel is a major part of the cost. For space travel, fuel is currently a negligible part of the cost, but the big honkin' ship that it takes to hold all that fuel is a major part of the cost. And in both cases, what we're trying to do is transmit the power wirelessly from the ground up to the aircraft or spacecraft so that you no longer have to carry your supply of energy on board. It's a bit of a multi-step process. It's a very challenging problem technically. We start with a microwave array that's laid out flat on the ground, pointing up at the sky. And then we use those to power an unmanned air vehicle, a drone, that hovers up at 60 or 70 or 80,000 feet above the airplanes and above the clouds. And there we make a frequency change. We change the lower frequency microwave energy to higher frequency infrared energy, beam that sideways, and from the altitude you can get over the horizon to an aircraft or a spacecraft that's 1,000 miles or so away from the ground station.
How big does the array need to be to do this kind of power beaming?
Large, on the order of a couple hundred acres, which is why you want to do this in a place where there's inexpensive dirt.
If you wanted to power the aircraft over, say, the whole United States, how many of these arrays would you need, and how many of these platforms that rebeaming the power?
3 or 4 to get coast to coast.
How much of this technology already existed when you started? How much of it are you developing? How much of it are you leaving to others?
The ideas are old, but we've had to put quite a spin on them to figure out ways to make them economically practical. We've been working on this problem for 10 years and gradually chipping away at the fairly significant technical challenges.
What about the airplanes that can run on electrically beamed power? Do those exist?
Those do not, because there's no current source of electrically beamed power in the quantities that you need to do this. This is a lot to take on, completely changing the architecture for aircraft. People have talked about electrifying aircraft for a long time for the environmental desirability of doing that. And the problem is, without the extension cord, the batteries don't cut it. So it will require a completely from the ground up design of a different aircraft. It's probably some form of rotorcraft rather than a fixed wing aircraft, because we use the rotating disc to get the big receiver area spread out that we need to receive the beam. But we're now a couple of steps down the business plan. You need to start with, as the trending goes, the minimum viable product. And for us, the earlier step is when we just have the ground transmitter and we just have the high altitude UAV, how can we make a business out of that while we're developing the aircraft and spacecraft technology? The nature of reusable rockets, which thank goodness we finally now have coming into service, is that they can get inexpensive if there's lots and lots and lots of flights to divide the large fixed cost by. But right now, all the customers are on the Earth. And space transportation globally is only about a $10 or $20 billion market. Air transportation is a $1 trillion market. So the core idea was, is there some way that we can do space transportation with a system that also serves air as a replacement for air transportation? If you could do that, you could make all your money and pay for all your expenses doing air transportation, and as we like to say, go to space on evenings and weekends.
Well, thanks for talking with us today, Jeff, and I look forward to seeing how this concept develops.
Thank you very much.
Our guest today has been Jeff Grayson, who is part of Electric Sky, a Tucson company trying to develop the technology to make electric airplanes possible. This is Tim Swindle, and you have been listening to Arizona Science. You can also listen to this and other Arizona Science segments by going to the AZPM website at azpm.org.
Thank you to Research Corporation for Science Advancement for their support of Arizona Science. AZPM podcasts are made possible in part by donations from listeners like you. Learn more at support.azpm.org. Thank you.